Alright, doing a video. Yeah, just a regular INMENDHAM video style kind of thing. Anyway, back on this subjective and objective morality. The dentist guy, who I really like. He's not really a dentist though. He's a faker. Anyway, yeah, he did a video to this bionic dance. Is it? Yeah, bionic dance. And I had noticed her video last week, one of her videos on this subject. I intended, to do a video response, and I just never got around to it. And then I rebooted the computer, and so, I just never got back to it. So anyway, I do want to cover this again. So I'll play this one of these videos here. But first, I will go to there. So I just wrote up this little bit of stuff here, about what objective, subjective, what these things, what these words really are. And sometimes what we're arguing with is the vocabulary and not the concept. The idea that there's value in the universe and that we could discern it and define it and describe it shouldn't be something we're going to argue about. Yeah, it really shouldn't be. That there's an end game, like where you know all the facts and the figures about what the universe is, what caused it, what was made out of, and that, in overview, it would be approximatable at least. That this is what the value equation was, that suffering did mean something, and that you basically had to pay for it with something of value to compensate for it, that suffering was a bad thing, that it was a good thing, that every planetoid in the universe wasn't covered with crying, suffering things. That's good. That it can kind of be stated as an absolute fact. And that's where this gets tricky. Is sometimes we're talking about whether there's such a thing as an absolute or a universal morality, and I'm going to argue that I think theoretically that would be a truth. There's a fact to the universe. It isn't an ambiguous, erroneous universe. It's a universe made of substance, and there's a complete knowledge of it. We can't possess it, but it exists as a complete thing that has real properties. And one of the properties is that it created this sentience thing, and that creates this value thing, because now something can actually be harmed. I mean, you can't harm a rock. You can harm a person or an animal. But anyway, subjective and objective get caught up in this because objective is sort of implies the absolute and the universal, which I don't really see a problem with. But anyway, but subjective and objective is more about perspective. So subjective would be a narrow perspective, close in, and objective would be further away, encompassing all details, having the blueprints, having the history, having as much information as possible. Objective would be the broadest point of view, subjective would be the narrowest point of view. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way to look at it is to take the word subjective, which does sort of have a definition, and it's all negative. I mean, subjective is basically abstract, biased, fanciful, idiosyncratic, illusionary, individual, instinctive, introspective, introverted, intuitive, non-objective, unrepresentative, personal, prejudiced, unobjective. Yeah, I mean, subjective is a bad thing. It's based on a bias, on a prejudice, on an unfairness, on a distortion of perspective. An objective would be the opposite, which would be independent of a personal gain, of personal interest, a personal perspective, a personal narrow point of view, because you have a good seat at the ball game, or because you have a connection at work, or because you have some cheat, some distinction from a pure perspective. See, pure would be a good word. And then logic gets shoved into this, because basically you have to have logical versus illogical argumentation, and it's all going to come down to argumentation in the end. It doesn't really matter what the truth is, whether we're going to call it an absolute fact or our best approximation of an absolute. It's all going to be on a scale, and the scale is what is the most reasonable explanation. What's the most what has the can be built to be the most credible, because it can be, is fact based and can be substantiated. And then we get into this word confidence. I would argue that no religious person who hasn't directly spoken with God, had a what do you call that, an appearance with God, has no business telling people what they should be doing when it comes to abortion or their lifestyle decisions. They have no right to impose their religion on a single other person if it's just faith-based, and because there's no logic behind it. They have no reason to be confident. They have confidence in their own life and how they live their own life, but they have no right to pull a lever in a voting booth and take away other people's rights based on their belief system, because their belief system has no credibility. But somebody who comes to a conclusion logically and has evaluated all the evidences, taken the wide perspective and looked at the blueprints and analyzed the evidence, and they come to a confident decision that this is the only possible truth and no alternative explanation can be provided, they have every right to invest all of themselves, every bit of themselves, in that truth, depending on how confident they are. And how possible it is that they can be wrong. And you can certainly know some things with a degree of confidence where you would invest every bit of your welfare, where you would face the jeopardy of eternity in hell, based on your miscalculation, because you're that confident that you've analyzed the evidence and come to the only possible reasonable conclusion. And people have to argue you out of that reasonable conclusion, and they can't do it with just silly mush like "I say so," or somebody who has a degree says so. So anyway, that was sort of a long explanation, but again, these are tricky words, and people throw them around, and it is really kind of irritating. So anyway, let's play this video. This rabid lesbian, she describes herself as, atheist of doom. She might be a rabid atheist lesbian of doom. Well, anyway, she is aggressive-ish, kind of a biker chickie style kind of thing. Kind of annoying.
Greetings, fellow space travelers. Boy, oh boy, did my last couple of videos cause
She's does have kind of a funny voice, a little chipmunky. Anyway.
stir. Seems there's a lot of you out there who are very invested in the idea of there being objective morality.
Yeah, we're invested in the idea that there's logic and there's evidence, and that we're not ignorant anymore. We got telescopes and microscopes, and we can deduce some truths about the world we live in. And yeah, we can say things like suffering sucks. It's not hard to do. And that's a value definition. And based on that value definition, we can define efficiency, which is the same thing as a morality. It's a value equation.
But it also seems as if most of you out there don't understand the difference between objective and subjective. Like,
yeah, I'd say you have that problem. So you can look all kind of crookedy in the camera there and play your little whatever this is, marketing style games, but you're not going to redefine the words
at all. These words are not status symbols. They're not there to lend legitimacy to your claims about morality or anything else.
Yeah, you know what? I find this kind of a specious argument anyway. I don't think there's a whole lot of people out there using the word objective when they describe their opinion. They state their opinion. What I see is I see a lot of people who playing this relativist game who are the ones trying to impose these words on the conversation and state that somebody else's opinion is subjective. I hear more people claiming subjectivity than I hear people claiming objectivity.
They describe a very important and relevant difference in the sources of information. YouTube user Toloculus put it in the best and simplest way I have ever heard. Mind-dependent and mind-independent.
Oh, yeah, well, that says a lot. Yeah, right. That's mind-dependent and mind-independent. So you have a mind-independent observation? I don't think so.
That which is subjective is based upon our point of view. Our
Let's see. Existing in the mind, belonging to the thinking subject rather than to the object of thought. Now, I don't know what dictionary you pulled that out of, but most of the dictionaries I've ever read, that's not the first definition of subjective.
experience, our opinions. That which is objective is not.
Oh, here we go. Oh, stupid ads. God, I hate this crap. Okay, intent upon dealing with things external to the mind rather than thoughts or feelings. Yeah, well, that's still kind of a bogus. Again, you're cherry-picked a definition. Most of the definitions, like I said, most of the acronyms and adjectives and whatever I got here for these words is accurate, narrow versus complete, logical versus unreasoned, decisive. I mean, actual, credible. These are the words for objective. This whatever, this little philosopher's game you play with this mind word is kind of silly right there. Mind, there's brain.
It exists independent of our experience or our mind. That's what these words mean, but it seems that a lot of people want to muddy the waters and make it so that objective can refer to something that we can know or feel.
Objective refers to something we can know or feel. It's not the point at all. Objective is basically the scientific approach. Objective is the well-reasoned, logical, methodical, precise, accurate, all of those good positive words. That's what objective is. Subjective is the stupid thing like I feel, I desire, words like beauty. That's subjective crap.
Some say that because our mind is doing the thinking and the feeling, that we can never know anything objective, never know anything that's truly minded.
Oh, phooey. Yeah, it wasn't the batteries this time. I forgot to delete the other video out of the camera. Ran out of space. So anyway, all this mind independent stuff is just mush. This is no way to talk about anything. We can't think independent of our mind.
And then there's those who think that our minds are made out of material and are therefore objective objects, and therefore our thoughts are also...
Whatever. Yeah, our thoughts. You're conceding the fact that we have thoughts. That means we wish to do a thing called thinking. Yeah, and you can do quality thinking and you can do shitty thinking. There's two kinds of thinking. You can think with your biological parts, with your stomach or some other organ, or you can think with your logical brain.
So objective. Let's deal with these in reverse order, shall we?
No, we shall.
Objective and subjective deal with our point of view, not what generates it. Even if our brain...
Not what generates it. You don't generate a point of view. You have one, period.
Brains are made of objective material, they still have a point of view, a perspective, and that's what subjective and objective refer to, not what generates that perspective.
Ugh, again, this is just totally irrelevant to the science of it, okay? It's not about perspective when you're sitting there and analyzing and dissecting. What you're accomplishing, what you're attempting to do is yes, encompass all perspective. That's why you use different instruments, so you can get different points of view. Ugh.
Next, just because our minds are on permanent subjective mode doesn't mean that the...
Yeah, and they aren't, okay? When Einstein did M equals M... no, well, you know what I'm saying. When he did E equals MC squared, he wasn't sitting there getting a boner over it, okay? He wasn't subjectively experiencing it. He was doing logical thought. He was modeling systems in his brain. He was doing thinking. Alright, legitimate, logical thinking.
outside world doesn't exist. It just means we might have a hard time perceiving it. If that truck really does exist, it's going to objectively hit you and kill you, whether you believe it or perceive it or not. And last...
It's just a silly way to use the word objectively. Again, it's in all probability. You can't even say anything for absolute. You have to define premises and then build a logic on the premises. So the first premise is that we're not in the Matrix, and that somebody isn't just going to pop up out of the ground and say April Fool. You know, it's within the realm of conceivable scenarios, but it has a likelihood of what? 1.00, I mean 0.00000001 or
If it
less.
isn't obvious by now that trying to claim objective status for your thoughts and feelings is wrong,
That's just silly. Again, there are at minimum you have to concede that there's a scale that things lie on, from complete fucking erroneous nonsense that's just completely made up, a fable, a fairy tale, and then something that is logic based, based on facts and evidence, and maybe decades of scrutiny and examination, and that those two things are on that scale from subjective to objective.
I'm not sure I can ever help you. Scientists strive for objectivity. Oh, they'll never reach it. Not 100%. But we have things like...
Yeah, again, where's the evidence of some personal bias in Einstein's physics, or Newton, or where's the evidence of that? They're not accomplishing something through subjective experience. They're accomplishing something through objective intellectual examination.
peer review to at least get us closer. Peer review exists to try to weed out personal bias. That's about as objective as...
Yeah, and it also exists to weed out fucking logic mistakes, okay, where somebody didn't account for something, and so they came to a false or wrong conclusion that can be demonstrated. So the argument is put to scrutiny and has to survive the scrutiny. It has to say, if somebody says here's the theory, there's no reasonable alternative explanation, then we'll see if somebody can come up with a reasonable alternative explanation. So it's not just about eliminating bias. I mean, that's just kind of silly.
we'll ever get. It sure seems as if you can't explain this to people. It seems like they really want to use that word objective as much as...
Oh, you're just so fucking patronizing and pompous. Like you're explaining something. No, I'm afraid not. And your little gimmickry here doesn't give you any more credibility.
They possibly can. I can only assume they're insecure and are trying to use it to gain legitimacy.
Yeah, and I can only assume that your effort to keep playing with this relativism and this subjectivism is that you don't want the accountability of an objective, universal idea that somehow you're accountable for your behavior, that your interactions in the universe have an impact and that you have to take responsibility for them. I see a lot of little weasels doing that game. They just don't want to be accountable for their fucking behavior, so they want to call it all relative and subjective so they don't have to be obliged to narrow their gluttony to some sort of reasonable levels.
I can only assume they don't want to know. And that means we can't have this conversation.
Yes, I assume the same thing about you then. You're too cement-headed and ignorant to have a conversation with. Silly person.
Not like intelligent, rational people.
Yeah, right. The intelligent, rational people who are playing little dinky video game music behind their videos. Yeah, that just adds so much objective perspective. That's not at all some kind of manipulative little subjective, let's get to their emotions, or let's play with their nipples kind of bullshit. Come on. God damn. What is that shit there for? What is all this popcorn you got going on here for? Except to bribe the audience.
Come on, gang. Quit running on automatic.
Well, quit doing video edits that your computer's not up to. Because, yeah, it doesn't make much sense to do all this impact stuff when you're not in sync with your own audio. Kind of lame.
Please, think.
Nah, maybe not. Nah. Oh, good. Yeah, that music was something. Let's give Kevin a huge round of applause for that rinky-dinky stuff. Because that was fun. And look, this is like, this is all scientific. You know, it's like this planet with it's all purpley and whitey and reddy and stuff. And yeah, that looks just like someplace I know or something, maybe, possibly, well, maybe not. So yeah. So we're going to talk about objective in a completely fake environment. Ah, yeah. So of course, no wonder why you don't have any respect for the fucking word. Yeah. So anyway. Sorry, but yeah, it's just kind of obnoxious. This whole, ew, it's just like some sort of cheap TV program or something. Yuck. 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 Okay, anyway. Enough has been said, I believe. So anyway, yeah, look, these words are going to keep... yeah, it's going to keep happening just because, again, these people don't want people to voice opinions with any authority, because they don't want to be restrained by any kind of logical confinement. No, I'm allowed to be a wasteful, extravagant fucktard, and it's my right. Well, no, I can still say you're a waste of space, or a glutton, or a pig. I can still do that, and I will do that. Yeah, it's my job. Alright, anyway, so yeah, that's I guess that's about it. Yeah. I really didn't want to be this hostile, but I kind of knew it was going to happen. I just this patronizing, I'm going to teach you what these words mean, with this fake bullshit, this propaganda manner is yeah, it just doesn't have any credibility or integrity, and yeah, so it's kind of oxymoronic to be, yeah. Okay, enough said. So anyway, I guess that's all. So yeah, I don't think I have to brag about anything else right now. It snowed today again. I had a shovel. I probably ruined my back, so I'll probably be disabled later. But whatever. Winter. It was spectacularly attractive, with the snow and the sun, and it was just really quite nice and all that crap. But yeah, it's not worth the price. Like every other part of life, just not worth the price. Okay, that's all. I'll gracefully end this video. Gracefully.